I was born in Somalia and grew up in Somalia. Just before the civil war broke out in 1990s, my mom wanted me to go to a school, but sadly the war broke out and I never went to school. And we ended up in displacement camp. Growing up in that situation, I could see firsthand the harrowing impact of the violence against the local communities, rape and sexual violence against women, killing of people indiscriminately. I had this background of wanting to tell the injustices committed right in front of my eyes.
The story of Abdalle in exile, unfortunately, is rather familiar to people who follow journalism and journalists in the Eastern Horn of Africa region. The first time he went to exile was after he received threats and was in an incident in Mogadishu where people shot at him because of his coverage of the Al-Shabaab.
I got the story which no local journalist will ever want to do about the death of the commander of the militant group in Somalia, which was a huge story. But that cost me trouble.
We find that coverage of the Al-Shabaab is associated with a lot of threats that journalists face in Somalia. Since 1992, we at CPJ have documented over 80 journalists killed in Somalia. Many of them have been killed by the Shabaab.
On January 26, 2015, is the day they came and shot my vehicle 3 times. I left the country immediately for good, becoming effectively a journalist in exile for over 4 years.
Abdalle Mumin is an inspiration, not just to Somali journalists, but to Kenyan journalists and journalists all over the world. He has essentially continued to protect the public's right to information, to protect a free press under the most unimaginable circumstances that Somali journalists have to go through.
So staying in exile, I always stayed in contact with local journalists. And then the idea came that we need to have an organization that can speak out effectively for the interest of the journalists in Somalia. And that's how I co-founded the Somali Journalist Syndicate, SJS. And then that took me that I have to get back to Somalia to do the job.
Somali Journalist Syndicate became one of the leading media freedom advocacy organizations in Somalia.
Very quickly, SJS goes from 0 to 100 and becomes the most vocal champion for journalists in Somalia.
Their work has become very critical for many journalists, including female journalists, journalists from marginalized groups.
We train local journalists on safety and security precautions. We also do advocacy when journalists are detained or jailed. We highlight and document journalists who are killed in the line of the duty. So we put together this documentation. In October 2022, there was a public declaration saying that the government will ban or restrict media freedom because the government wants us to go war on Al-Shabaab, the militant group.
And here it is, again, you see it, the rock and the hard place. Covering Al-Shabaab is dangerous, but the government will try to threaten you, push you, silence you for covering them.
You can't eradicate terrorism or insecurity if corruption is there. If US, UK, and other governments want to stop this, they can, through demanding accountability and transparency, through imposing sanctions on security forces and their commanders, and government officials who are culprit of these violations
Shortly after the Ministry of Information issued that declaration, the Somali Journalists Syndicate, led by Abdalle Ahmed Mumin, addressed the media expressing concern about the impact of such a directive on freedom of expression and on the safety of journalists in Somalia.
And that's when they started attacking me individually and attacking SJS. They raided the office and then they kidnapped and detained me for 44 days in different cells where people are tortured, where people are kept and interrogated. I was consistently persecuted and taken to court for over 7 months in Somali capital Mogadishu, just because I questioned the government directive that restricts the media freedom.
He quickly realizes, as do we all, that he's not safe in Somalia. And there is Abdallah's, latest departure from exile.
Amnesty International nominated Abdalle Ahmed Mumin for a fellowship program at the York University.
This was the opportunity to provide to me safe location, safe space to think, reflect, act on, and do what I'm doing now.
He was the perfect candidate, someone that is so committed to continuing his work that he needed to be taken out and given a period of safety.
When journalists like me is kidnapped and detained for 44 days just because for speaking out, and the West is not doing anything at all, that is green lighting corruption to go ahead and to thrive.
When you target the loudest person, it makes everyone else question, do I really need to be reporting this story that I'm chasing?
There's already a limit on the number of journalists working in these areas, so we absolutely have to support the few that are left.
Until today, as we speak, no journalist is able to come out or question any government policy because of the fear they have due to my case. And it also brought many journalists to leave the country because they thought that it's not going to be safe for them.